Welcome to Owl Invasion, where it's been 3 days since our last owl-based mauling. It's Halloween, and that sounds like a fantastic time to talk about a weird Famicom game. Let's talk about 1989's Sweet Home. In its day, Dragon Quest clones were, for the most part, a dime a dozen, especially on the Famicom. But what made this game stand out is that it's a survival horror game. In fact, it's actually one of the first survival horror games in the genre. I'm willing to argue it's also one of the most influential. So much so that the first Resident Evil game, during its planning, was initially going to be a remake of this game, Sweet Home. It's also based on the less than well-known, kind of okay movie of the same name. And the director of the movie, Kiyoshi Kurosawa, before he became notable with his 1997 movie Cure, Kurosawa was also on the game's supervising team, and his Alfred Hitchcock meets classical Japanese horror taste really shines through. I can't quite put my finger on it, but with many less than stellar Dragon Quest games clogging up the RPG market, it's kind of rare for any of them to really do a lot of standing out. I feel like the big factor in this one that makes it interesting is that a lot of the creative forces behind it, in part, work with video games, but in some parts, for example, Kurosawa, don't work with video games, so they're able to kind of have a bit of an outsider's look at it. And I feel like that outsider looking in attitude is what made this game interesting. And I feel like Shigesato Itoi's Mother games also have very heavy elements of person that doesn't really work with video games, but understanding why they're fantastic makes these kind of games shine. The game and the film mostly follow the same plot. A film crew ventures into the abandoned mansion of deceased artist Ichiro Mamiya to recover his last painting and get all the rest of his paintings restored and on tape. But lo and behold, the mansion locked itself behind the crew as they go in, and turns out the mansion is a death trap, it's falling apart, and there's a little bit of a bloodthirsty monster problem. As it turns out, throughout the course of the game, all that's being caused by the ghost of Ichiro's wife, who 30 years prior had a son who fell into the mansion incinerator. Not really sure if mansions actually have incinerators. But Lady Mamiya began to murder children, thinking it would give her son more playmates. Unable to forgive herself, Lady Mamiya committed suicide, and her ghost is unable to leave the mansion. Whew, boy, this took a grim turn. So the team has to fight through hordes of monsters into the deepest depths of the mansion to confront Lady Mamiya for the final battle. I'm not gonna bother spoiling the finale, although I've spoiled the rest of the plot. Rest assured, the game does have a pretty funny twist for a monster movie at the end. Each member of the crew has a special item that they go into battle to, and it's very critical, these items, to make progress in the game. As far as the film crew, we have Kazuo, who's the producer, he's the leader of the gang. He has a lighter that can be used to burn down obstacles and attack enemies. Taguchi is the cameraman, and he uses his camera to take photos of the artwork and find hidden messages on the art revealing the plot, which it just spoiled. We also have Akiko, who's the nurse, who's able to use first aid to heal your party. Kinda. We'll come back to that one in a second. We have Asuka, who is the art restorer, who can use a vacuum to clean up the dirty paintings, but more importantly, sweep up shattered glass that's blocking your path. And most importantly, as far as gameplay is concerned, there is Emi, who has a key that you can use to open doors, which there are a lot of in the game, and she doesn't really seem to have a particular job. I guess she's just tagging along. The game has a few interesting quirks going for it. Namely, in battle, when a party member dies, oof, that's it. They're gone. They're dead, just like in real life. None of this being incorporeal, none of this reviving items or anything. They're just gone. And the game has a very finite number of potions, to be exact, about 21. And Akiko's healing only restores status ailments, less so much HP. So needless to say, try not to let anyone die. If you do, you won't be able to use their specialty anymore. While you can pick up replacement items for them along the way, for example, instead of having the vacuum, you have a broom, it doesn't work as well, and it also takes up an item slot, which in the game there are very, very few. The game also, outside of potions, doesn't have any way of restoring your HP, so random battles are always relevant even at very high levels. I feel like this adds a certain layer of tension that only a game can do, in that you feel very much motivated to explore the mansion more, but at the same time very stressed out about doing so, because you have a very finite number of healing items, and because random battles are, well, random, they're always going to happen. So in a sense, you're put on this very pseudo-ish time meter where you can only stick around for as long as you have items to heal yourself up. But because there are so many random battles going on, and believe you me, there are a lot of them, it really puts you on a clock. So needless to say, try not to let anyone die. The game and the film follow the same plot, but in the way that they handle the medium that they're in, they're sort of the opposite. The film is sort of a love letter to old haunted house movies, more akin to Scream love letter, not so much Cabin in the Wood love letters. But the game, on the other hand, because there's not really a lot of survival horror going on in games at this point, it's more about exploring what games can do with survival horror, like letting the player just kind of go, huh, that was kind of interesting, instead of calling your attention out to something. The game also is interesting in that for the battle music, there's always a little bit of wind up before you find out what enemy you're fighting, because generally RPGs have music going on in them and have a special track for battle, but the battle track for the game has a little bit of dun 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 dun, uh-oh, what's behind the curtain thing going on to it. And this never really comes off as the game trying to scare you, but using what's pretty normal in games, i.e. music, and adding on to the atmosphere, without creating any unnecessary baggage of the game trying to scare you and then not, and looking awkward because it tried to do something it didn't. So yeah, for the most part, that's what Sweet Home is. I'm not exactly here to tell you if a game is any good or any bad, because I feel like there are a plethora of people who can say that a hell of a lot better than I can, but I can say if you like game history like I do, and you are interested in seeing survival horror in games in its infancy, and exactly what it is RPGs can do without the context of Dungeons and Dragons, this is probably a game you want to check out sometimes. Okay, I feel like that was a pretty good first episode. Next time we're going to talk about something else. You know, thinking about it, I have to say this plot is very, bare bones, eh? Yeah, puns.